Welcome to the Harshie Podcast with myself, January Harshie.
And Brandon Harshie.
So I'm really looking forward to this podcast, actually, because this week I had the opportunity to sit down with Bren from the Birth Hour. I actually met Bren, I don't know if I met her in Portland. We were at the same event, in Portland a few years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And then I met her at a BWF meetup a few years ago.
Here in Austin.
It was here in Austin, and it was the worst gallbladder attack I've ever had that day.
That was a rough day.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to talk to her too much, but we've been in touch a little bit since, and I dropped the ball here or there getting together, but it finally worked out, and I had the opportunity to sit down with her because she's local here in Austin, and her podcast is The Birth Hour, which I think is brilliant because instead of having to read birth stories, especially late at night, laying in bed, you can listen to them. And I think it's great. And so...
It's a great way to fall asleep.
Yeah. And so...
Not saying that her podcast is boring. So
not at all.
Don't take it that way.
Not at all. But when you're trying to soak up as many birth stories as you can or wisdom from other women's experiences, it's a wonderful way to do so. She's actually the only person that I would do that with. Sit down and share my birth stories. And my birth stories have not been recorded before.
They have not.
This is the first time ever. So my first four birth experiences, our first four birth experiences are going to be shared on the Birth Hour podcast. And today we're going to share our fifth birth experience because Brandon and I ran out of time. Actually, when I sat down with her, I asked her how long she typically does them for, and she said about an hour, and we did the first four and wrapped up, and I asked her how long, and she said an hour and a half. And that was with us just going right through them. So yeah, there's so much to share with birth experiences, right? Oh, yeah. And it's not always just the birth, but your life leading up to it.
Oh yeah. The
birth itself, the reason why the decision, it's been a long day. You guys know that you follow me or listen to my stuff because I'm authentic and I don't cut that stuff out or do retakes. But anyways, there's a lot of things going on when it comes to pregnancy and birth and postpartum than just sharing, I had a birth this way. So
if only it were that easy.
Right.
Good Lord.
So we're going to share our fifth birth experience on this podcast because you'll be able to listen to the other four on Bren's and the Birth Hour. And I think we'll share our sixth next week. So
yes.
The fifth birth experience is those of you who have known me via social media or in person for a while now, we refer to him as the bull.
The bull.
Are you going to do that thing where you repeat every important thing I say?
I won't do that thing where I repeat every important thing you say.
Oh, goodness.
I didn't think I'd be able to remember all that.
Do you know how many times I say, oh, goodness, or oh, man on our podcast because of you? Now you guys can all count them and pay attention. So with our fifth, he is our very, very spirited child. And I think that ties into his pregnancy and his birth experience and postpartum, actually. So picking up where I left off with the Birth Hour was we had our fourth baby. Mm-hmm. It was an incredibly healing experience. And not just for me, but for you. This very healing experience.
Yeah, it was the best day of my life, I say.
And there it is. I actually said that on...
Oh, did you? Okay.
On the Birth Hour, yeah. And you just completely affirmed that without me asking you to. Yeah. So that was cool.
Another reason why it was great is I was towards the end of chiropractic school.
So our postpartum was wonderful.
Right. So I had most of my outpatient clinic credits done. And so I called up my clinic doctor, who's essentially your boss when you're in an outpatient clinic, and said, hey, we had a baby today. He's like, all right. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We got everything taken care of. And that was that.
Which many of you listening just knows how amazing that is. And we hadn't had that before either ourselves. So it was an incredible experience. It was a very, very healing birth experience. The postpartum was wonderful. And, between having our fourth baby and conceiving our fifth baby, quite a bit happened.
Boy, did it.
I started Birth Without Fear. You graduated chiropractic school.
Well, first I graduated chiropractic school.
True. If we're going to go in order.
Do you want to go through the timeline leading up to?
It was so
crazy.
much. So
oh my God.
You graduated school.
I graduated school like September-ish of 2009.
We lived in Dallas, Texas.
Lived in Dallas, and I had a professor that I was pretty close with at school, and he had a practice out in Commerce, Texas, which is about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half east of Dallas. And so we were going to move out to Commerce so I could practice out of his office and pay him some rent. And so we moved out to Commerce, rented this house.
Okay, but
And
we had loaded up all of our things, our 4 children. We checked the mail before we left that day.
mm-hmm.
And you received
that's
mail
right.
that day that you did not pass.
My jurisprudence test to get my license. Dope.
It's like funny now, but it was so not funny then.
It's just the stupidity. I could pass boards, national board exams easy, but chiropractic law for some reason.
Because you went in there thinking, oh, I got this. I remember.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't need to study. I got this. And you went in and you failed. And we
I actually missed it by one question too.
We found out the day we were moving to East Texas.
Yeah, there's your
So
sign.
needless to say, you could not practice. And we moved into this house that we had previously looked at, talked to the landlord. And there were a certain number of things that were supposed to be done to this house before we moved in. And when we got there, they hadn't been done. And
Nope.
it wasn't a livable type of situation. So after being in this house for 2 nights, we realized we needed to find somewhere else to stay.
Yes.
And we had to rent another moving truck. And we were on very limited funds, of course. We had been students and loans. And so we rented a truck. We knew some acquaintances that said we could stay with them close by. And as we're loading the truck, our number 3, Miss New York, was only...
She's about 2.5.
Not even maybe? Yeah, about that.
Yeah, she's about 2.5.
And this was kind of out in the country. So she was by the truck and all of a sudden I hear her yelling. And I run over to her and she had been in a fire ant mound.
Oh, God, yeah.
So I picked her up right away and they were, they swarmed fast.
Oh, yeah.
They were up to her diaper. And I just, got them all off of her in a panic, stripped her down. And she was swelling up from all of these fire ant bites. And immediately you checked her. She needed to be adjusted. You adjusted her and I put her to the breast and breastfed her. She was close to the end of her breastfeeding time, actually.
She was actually about 2 there.
Because So she was still breastfeeding. So between making sure her nervous system was working correctly, her immune system was working correctly, and then getting her on the breast and breastfeeding her, the inflammation calmed down and everything calmed down because we weren't sure there for a minute if we needed to take her into the hospital.
Right.
So things were a little chaotic and
yes,
and she ended up, of course, being all right. And we would have taken her in if we needed to, but we didn't. So we packed up our things. We moved in with these acquaintances for a few weeks. They moved out. We lived there for a few months. And it was a very up in the air time for us because we had a plan. Can't even say that without laughing because anytime we make a plan, life is like, ha ha ha, that's so cute, Harshies. But guess what?
Yeah.
This is how it's going to go, or you still have things to learn. So you couldn't work with your professor and you couldn't work in the office at the time because how long did it have to be between taking your tests?
Not too long. But I passed it, and then I remember I actually was officially licensed December 22nd of 2009.
You have such an amazing memory. I do not.
Yeah.
I'm like, who are you?
Well, that's kind of a big benchmark in my mind.
True.
Professionally.
That's true. So by this time, the opportunity had passed with you being a doc in this office.
Mm-hmm.
So we had found our own house, still in East Texas.
Yeah.
and we had an extra room. It was a very old house. It was really weird, but
It was like a circle.
it was a circular house, but there
Yeah.
was a separate door into a room. And so you saw some people out of this room in our house for a little while.
That's right.
And,
Yeah.
and we were still in the Mormon church.
Yes.
And one of the great things about the Mormon church, like we talked about 2 podcasts ago, was the community and the help. And we definitely did have that at the time, which we're grateful for. And everything was kind of up in the air. And this was the house in Greenville, Texas.
Greenville. Where were we before that? Good old Wolf City.
Oh gosh, it was like this Commerce, Wolf City, Greenville area of East Texas.
Yeah, it's been 3 months. We were in Commerce, Wolf City. Actually, Dallas, Commerce, Wolf City, and then
Yeah.
Greenville.
And if you're a weird stalker type person, don't even waste your time looking it up because it's not interesting at all. So
No.
this was the house that we were living in, that I had laid down our 4th baby for her nap one day, breastfeeding her to sleep before we had phones and could be concerned with apps. And, we actually thought and used our brains and
Or took a nap
or took a nap with them.
with the baby. Yeah.
And that's actually where I came up with Birth Without Fear. So I started Birth Without Fear in this house.
Yes.
And I actually went back to my prerequisites for chiropractic school myself during this time.
Yes.
So I was driving an hour and 15 minutes to Parker College Chiropractic. And everything was just up in the air. And then we finally decided that you needed to find a new associateship.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that there was another baby for our family. So, again, I made plans. Oh, you'll get an associateship. We'll have another baby. I want them all close in age anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so you interviewed with a couple docs, right?
I interviewed with one in Sulphur Springs, which is about 30 miles east of Greenville. And she had a great practice.
Family practice.
Yeah, she saw quite a few people a week. I mean, it was a pretty big practice. But then there was a doc that I knew from when I was at school. He came and visited, and he practiced a similar technique that I was interested in. And I emailed him and said, hey, do you have anything open? Because I knew he hired associates and sometimes would have 1 or 2 associates at a time. And it turned out that he did.
In Austin.
And so the opportunity was to come down to Austin, work for him for a few months, learn the ropes, how he did things in his office. And then he was going to buy this great practice in San Angelo that had an 80-year history that had ties
it was amazing.
to, not the founder of chiropractic, but his son who kept it alive in the first half of the 20th century.
Right. And we visited this doctor and his office, and we were like, this is it for our family.
It was amazing. It was fantastic. So he was going to buy this practice. I was going to work in it for a couple of years, build up the numbers, then buy it from this doc that I was working for. And it seemed like a fantastic opportunity. I was trying to secure the future for my family so we didn't have to worry about anything. It seemed like a great time to have another kid.
And you guys listening to this, especially if you're listening to this with your spouses or partners, we had a conversation about this, and I voted that he worked 30 miles away with this family doc because it wouldn't uproot our family. And he said, nope, I need to work for this upper cervical chiropractor in Austin. This is what I want.
Yeah.
And we support our partners and our spouses, and I supported him. And we're not the type of people to live apart from each other. So we uprooted our family and moved to Austin, and we could not find a short-term lease in Austin at the time. So we lived in an extended stay in not the best part of Austin, actually. It was actually a really bad part of Austin.
Extended stay motel. Oh,
and
God.
Every time I pass by this extended stay once in a while, now that we're back in Austin, I can't even cope. Like, I can't even handle it, and we'll get to that in a minute. So, well, actually, let's just get to that right now. So we were staying in this, we moved and we're staying in this extended stay, and you were so excited. You were so excited to have this opportunity, and we had a plan again. We had a plan, and it was a great plan. And we, of course, we we're very, very fortunate that when we decided to have another baby, we're like, yeah, let's do this. And we conceived pretty quickly. So
yes, we do.
We were pregnant with our 5th baby. We had 4 young children. We're staying in an extended stay.
2-bedroom hotel room, essentially.
1 bedroom at first, then 2 bedroom.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We moved.
Yeah. And not in the greatest part of Austin. And we were only going to be here for 3 months, though, before we moved to this practice. And you took over this practice in St. Angelo. And we had a plan. And there were many times during this time that I thought, what was I thinking? Getting pregnant with another baby. But I had to remind myself that we had a plan and it was a good plan.
Yeah.
You don't always have all the information in front of you. You don't know what's going to happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it became apparent about 2.5 months into this apprenticeship, right?
No, associateship.
Associateship,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I was getting paid, so
Right,
not
associateship.
much, but
That things might not work out the way we had thought they would. And by the 3-month mark, they didn't. Everything fell through. Let's just say everything fell through.
yeah.
Everything fell through. It happens. But unfortunately, they moved on. We were living in an extended stay in a bad part of Austin with 4 children pregnant and no money because we were living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to be responsible and trying to do everything ourselves and trying not to accept help from the state or the church or whatever. And we found ourselves in a really compromising situation.
Yeah.
And a scary situation. So there were times living in this extended stay where we didn't have enough money for food for the whole week.
Mm.
And I know for you didn't want to let that on, of course, with your bosses. And you wanted to just show up at work and just work hard and do what you were supposed to do. But I was back at this hotel where you were at work with 4 young kids, many times without a car unless you took the bus. And the only way we ate breakfast was the free bagels and muffins at this extended stay.
Yeah.
And there were some mornings when we were so sick of one or the other and they would be out of one or the other that it would just ruin my whole day.
Yep.
And there were nights that by the time I made sure our kids were fed and their bellies were full, that we didn't have much food left for us.
That is true.
And there were many nights that I was pregnant with this baby. I went to bed hungry. It was a very, very hard time for our family.
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult. I was obviously so stressed out. I was desperately, and desperately is the right word, desperately trying to make this associateship work out and this opportunity work out.
You wanted it so bad.
And it just wasn't. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I mean, this doc and his wife, they told me I was the hardest working associate they'd ever had. And they'd been hiring associates for 10 years. I was busting my ass, pounding the pavement, trying to set up screenings and talking to everybody and their mother, trying to get patients in. And first month was great. They were so impressed. But then I worked so freaking hard and didn't sleep enough and was so stressed out that I got incredibly sick that second month.
That's right.
And then it just, things were so
stressful. The third
stressful.
month we were stressed out, really stressed out.
Just because there was a lot of friction that happened between me and this doc. And that's putting it nicely. And we just had to move on.
There was one time during this 3 months that things were so difficult and it was causing us to argue very badly. Mm-hmm. And see, when I post on social media about me and Brandon, we've been together 19 years, we're in love. You're my true love. And
you're one true love.
And I'm yours, I would assume. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
And people say, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, you better shut the hell up. This is not luck.
You're so lucky to be married to a chiropractor.
My chiropractic care will be more expensive than anybody else's for the rest of our lives. You guys don't even know how much in student loans we have. It's like we own a really nice house without owning a house. We live in an apartment with 6 children. Gosh. There was one time during this 3 months, I'm pregnant with the bull. We have 4 young kids and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it. So I called my grandparents and said, I need to come visit. And my grandparents rented us a car and I got in the car with 4 young children and pregnant. And my family didn't know I was pregnant. I was 11 weeks pregnant. And drove from Texas to Arizona just to get away for a few weeks from the chaos and the fighting and the uncertainty and the lack of food and the stress. And the first thing I did when I got there was I went to my grandmother and said, I need money to go to Sprouts. I went and did this massive food. I spent so much of their money on food the 2 weeks I was there. We didn't do anything else. I just bought food. I just didn't want to be hungry.
I remember going to Sprouts during that 2 weeks too.
Yeah, Sprouts is awesome. So especially on Wednesday, double ad day. Hey.
I think I went one time. I spent $50 for the 2.5 weeks you were gone.
That's what happens when you're one person and not a family of a million.
Holy crap.
So
it's fantastic.
This time was really intense for us. And anyway, so the associateship fell through and we found ourselves wondering, what the crap? We decided to have another baby and we had a plan for our family and some things are out of your control. And so we moved from Austin back to Dallas and to my friend's house. And she has 4 children. They're a little bit older than ours. Mm-hmm. And we lived with them for 6 weeks.
Yes. Which
was hard on everyone. And bless her heart, she came to me and said, I value our friendship too much. We need you to move out. Which is, I got to give her mad respect for that. Yeah. And they were amazing to us. They were wonderful to us. Mm-hmm. And I remember when we first moved into their house, which we all knew was temporary. And the first thing I was so relieved about was that they had enough food to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lived with them for 6 weeks. Brandon was found a chiropractor friend's office to work out of. Mm-hmm. And this whole time I had just started Birth Out Fear, actually.
Yeah, she started in May.
And we started the Facebook page in May and the blog in October.
Yeah.
And we lived with our friends during this time in October. And then when they were sick of us, they helped us, but we moved into another hotel. And you guys, this was not the Ritz-Carlton. This was a dinky hotel in
I think motel is probably
Dallas, Texas, with our 4 kids. And at this time, I was a lot more pregnant, of course. And I hadn't even told my family I was pregnant until around this time. And I was approaching my 3rd trimester of my pregnancy with the bull. Mm-hmm. So this whole pregnancy, there was this uncertainty. There was this fear. There was this unsettled feeling. And it was very difficult to go from an incredibly peaceful place mentally, spiritually, physically with my 4th to this complete uncertainty in every aspect of my life with my 5th. So we were living in this hotel, and I will never forget, we showed up with our few belongings and we walked in, and our oldest, who was about 7 at the time, I want to say.
Yeah, she was.
She walked in, she looked around, and she said, no, just no. And she threw her stuff down. And I felt like a complete failure as a mother.
And I was a licensed chiropractor. I was a professional. I should have had a practice and been making money, and I couldn't do shit, it seemed like. I was so desperate for money to provide for my family, and that probably came across when I was out and about trying to wrangle in some new patients however I could, and it just wasn't working well at all. And I remember on New Year's Eve, we were in that hotel, and I was out in the parking lot, pacing back and forth in the parking lot over by the dumpster on the phone with my dad, and just broke down to him because I just couldn't believe I was a professional, a doctor of chiropractic, and here I am struggling. We have no home, technically. Living in a hotel is not having a home, in my opinion, and a piece of crap hotel too, motel. whatever, Roach Motel.
The only reason why our kids had any Christmas that year was because of my grandparents.
That is true.
We had finally turned to our family for help. And thank goodness we have family we can turn to for help, because many people don't.
I remember on December 31st, I have to get my my chiropractic license. I have to pay for it by the end of
That's right.
December every year, because my birth month is January. You have to pay for it by the end of the previous month. And it was December 31st, about 11:30 p.m. when we finally figured out a way to pay for it online. It was like the 11th hour just to keep my license.
I remember I was running Birth Without Fear through that time, and I didn't have a laptop or anything like that, and I would go up to the little dinky front office at this hotel we were staying in, and I remember one time sitting there very pregnant with a bull and answering comments on a blog post and on Facebook and giving all of these women support. And I was sitting there pregnant and struggling, but I never told anyone. Because Birth Without Fear wasn't about me. At the time, it was for everyone else. And it's a very isolating and lonely feeling when you're going through things in life, but you don't feel like you can share them, right?
No, yeah.
So this is what happened. We went through Christmas, we got through New Year's, and I was due with this baby in February.
That's right.
And I remember, and the beginning of January came around, and I said to you, there is no way in hell I am birthing the baby in this piece of shit hotel. It is not happening. And I had been talking to some midwife friends of mine because I wanted a midwife assisted birth. I did not want another unassisted birth. My fourth was unassisted healing birth, like you said, the best day of your life. But I knew that this time my gut told me I needed care, and especially after I had the baby, not so much for the birth, but after I had the baby. So I during this time, I had talked to some midwives I knew, and I hired them on very low income based. They were amazing and were going to work with us. And I knew we needed some kind of a home.
Yeah.
That wasn't this. And I went into mama bear mode, and I looked up apartment move-in specials in Dallas, because Dallas has a shit ton of apartments.
I think Irving has most apartments per capita.
It's ridiculous. So
possibly the country.
The competition there for getting people into apartments is very different than Austin. And I looked at move-in specials. I found this apartment, which I had heard of when we had lived there previously for your schooling.
Yes.
And how humbled we were, because when we lived there before, I was like, oh no, I wouldn't want to live there. And I was like, please let us live there. Yeah. Humbling, right?
Yeah.
So I went to this apartment complex. It was like a $99 move-in special. I don't even think we had $99, but it was a $99 move-in special. And I sat there, and I was pregnant, like showing pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant. And I'm not a liar by any means. I hate lying. And even if I wanted to lie, you would be able to see all over this unicorn face.
It's true.
Like I couldn't get away with it if I wanted to. Just couldn't. And so I'm sitting there filling out this application, and I'm talking to the leasing agent. And she said, and how many children do you have? And this is for a 2-bedroom apartment. There's limits. And I looked at her and I said, 2. And I gave no, you know what? Are we making this explicit or not?
I hadn't planned on it.
Okay.
We can.
So I gave no Fs.
We gave no bleeps.
I gave no bleeps because I needed a home for my family and for my children.
Yes.
So we, of course, got the apartment. And then the move-in normal rate was like $199 or $299. And I was like, no, because we didn't have that. I was like, there's a move-in special for $99. It's right here, and I'll print it up right now. And I did. And we got into this 2-bedroom apartment. We moved our small belongings in, and we moved our children in, and we set ourselves up to be our new home.
Yeah.
And we found an office close by, an office building that had like, if you sign for 2 years, you get the first couple months free. And you had a job with overnight valet.
Yes, I did a lot of valet parking in chiropractic school, and a very flexible job. You can make a lot of money in tips if you hustle, and so I really loved it. And so I figured, what the heck? Why not just go back to what works? So I found an overnight valet job at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, and worked full time 5 nights a week from 10:30 to 6:30, 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m.
So you work an overnight valet.
Mm-hmm.
We found a place that would lease us something with no rent for the first like few months. And we put our kids in school close by, our older kids.
Yes, we did.
And then I hit 40 weeks pregnant, 41 weeks pregnant, 42 weeks pregnant. 42 and a half weeks, my midwife said, I really need you to go in and have a biophysical ultrasound, all that. Mm-hmm. To check everything. Now, I was having very intense prodromal labor. And for those of you listening who have had that, solidarity, friend, solidarity. But for those of you who haven't had that, it feels like you're going into early labor repeatedly for hours at a time, for weeks at a time. So, I've had 2 vaginal births at this point, 4 kids, but 2 vaginal births. And I was having intense prodromal labor to the point that I felt like I was going into active labor and then it would stall. And I realized at some point during this that he must be facing my left leg just like number 3 did.
Yeah.
So she had asked me, my midwife had asked me to get, an ultrasound and everything at about 42 weeks. And I put it off because I didn't want to drive downtown to do this because I felt like I was about to have this baby any minute. Like literally, I felt like I was in labor.
Yeah.
So, in the state of Texas, obviously at 42 weeks, like she needed this to continue care with me. And it was one of those situations where we were making decisions based off day by day. And I told her at 42 and a half weeks, maybe I just have to have this birth unassisted again because I don't know what to do. I keep going into labor and it keeps stalling and he's not coming. So she supported me no matter what. She was wonderful. And at 43 weeks, he still wasn't here. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is not okay. So we did end up going for the ultrasound anyways. And we went to this ultrasound, and this was the same lady who had done our ultrasounds actually for quite a few of our pregnancies. Mm-hmm. And she checked on him, and he was doing well. He was in good condition. Placenta was doing okay. Mm-hmm. Our fluids were doing well, and she looked with the placenta. She said, "This baby is going to come in the next 1 to 3 days. He has to." So we went home and I kept having this labor that picked up and then it kept stalling and it confuses you. It's so confusing. I just didn't know what to do. And I was so frustrated because this wasn't anything like our 4th. And how could I have this amazing healing, wonderful labor and birth experience with my 4th and just not get there again? I was so frustrated with myself. So at 43 and a half weeks that morning, we took the older 2 kids to school and I looked at you and I said, we're going to IKEA. If anything can put somebody into labor, it's walking IKEA. Damn it. So that's what we did. And we walked IKEA and sure enough, my labor picked up and it picked up and it picked up. And I was like, okay, here we go again. Is it going to stall out? Mm-hmm. And we went home. We got the kids from school. And it was still progressing. I was like, okay, and we got the kids to bed and it progressed more and more. And I labored all night with contractions 5 minutes apart. I sat there in our bed as you dozed in and out, checking on me and passing back out. I sat there listening to the train in Carrollton, Texas. Still now when I hear a train, I kind of cringe a little because all night long, the bull and I sat there laboring, listening to the trains coming through. And then by morning, it started pittering out again. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So I decided to rest, because if you're too tired, you cannot push a baby out. So I decided to rest. And I remember telling you, if the baby does not come today or this evening, if we wake up tomorrow, we have to go to the hospital. Like, it's just not okay.
Yeah.
And you agreed.
Yeah, I was worried.
Yeah, we were both worried. And
pretty scared.
The reason why we see with this birth experience, it wasn't just about the birth, it was everything leading up to it. There was so much uncertainty, so many fears, so much shame, moving around, being hungry.
Yeah,
we moved 4 times this pregnancy, and it led to this very long erratic labor and just so much uncertainty. And the whole time I was so upset with myself, and I had to keep reminding myself that we had a great plan.
Yeah.
Right?
We did.
So I went through the day resting and having contractions about 10 minutes apart. That evening, when it was about bedtime, I texted the midwife assistant who I previously had and told her the situation. And she said, take some skull cap tincture. When we have moms that have really long labors, it relaxes them in their anxiety and lets them get some rest before it's time to really go. So we got the kids in bed, and I said, I need you to go get me some skull cap tincture. Actually, before we put them in bed, you went and got it. You came home. You got the kids to bed. I took the skull cap tincture, and then I said, I need you to go get me some wine, because I was trying to slow this down enough to get enough rest to then hopefully push this baby out. And you were like, okay, because you were in like whatever I can do mode, whatever I can do to fix this, whatever I can do to help. So
we were still part of the Mormon church. And so at the time that was for medicinal purposes. So it was allowed.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm such a dork. Yeah, we didn't drink at all. So we didn't have anything in the house.
Yeah,
so
no.
The only thing that was open was Walmart. So Brandon goes to Walmart to get me wine.
A box of wine.
So classy. We were classy people at the time.
$6.95.
Oh my God. So I take skull cap tincture. He gets them in bed. He leaves to go get me wine. And all of a sudden, the skull cap tincture didn't help me rest. It helped everything just ease. And I ended up in active labor. And I'm having these contractions really close. They're getting more intense. And I'm like, whoa. So I get in the bath. I'm like, okay, I need to get in the bath. I need to get through these. And I'm sitting in the bath, right? This little dinky bathtub. And I don't even think my ass fit in it. But I sat in it anyways. And I was like, my contractions are not stronger than me because they are me. My contractions are not stronger than me because they are me. Holy crap, these contractions are stronger than me. I don't know who the hell came up with this crap. Like, it was really intense. And I stand up and I'm holding on to the towel rack and I'm swaying my hips and I'm like, come on, baby, you've got to come to me. And I'm thinking my neighbors must be thinking I'm having this great time, but I'm not. And then I realize, holy crap, I'm in transition. So I went from a stalled labor to transition just like that.
Yeah.
And my husband wasn't home. So I'm going through this in the bathroom and I'm just working through each contraction that's really intense and they're coming fast. And you get home, right? You get home and you open the front door and you hear me hollering in the bathroom.
Yeah, I thought one of the kids was up and
right,
something like that. And my first reaction is like, "Oh shit!"
And you dropped the box of wine.
Dropped a couple things I got right there on the floor. Found out later that I had forgotten to even close the front door.
So our front door was open.
Front door was open.
There's a bag with a box of Walmart wine on the floor. You came back. I remember I was in the bathroom and you came back and you looked at me and you looked like, after looking at me for like just a moment, you said, "Oh, we're having a baby." And I remember looking at you and saying, "You think?" And so I start just pacing. I'm in like mama bear, mama cat mode. I'm pacing like I mentioned this in the Birth Hour podcast, but everything is so vulnerable. Everything's opening. Everything's spreading, your hips and your pelvis, and everything's opening up, and you can't feel that baby's head yet. And it's so vulnerable. And you're just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. So you had laid down, right? You had laid down all the Chuck's pads.
Yeah.
Everything to get the space ready. Cause isn't
Plastic
it true?
on the bed.
You just want to do whatever you can, right? Like just everything you can to help. And I ended up back in the bathroom. I love squatting over the toilet because you can sit down and rest, and it's still open squatting position.
Yep.
Now I had been in prodromal labor for weeks, and I'm 43 and a half weeks, and I had been in labor for off and on for a few days, stalled and starting. And this was the last night we were giving it before we transported to the hospital. I was exhausted, and I stand up in a squatting position. And you bent down on one knee in front of me.
Yeah.
You bent down on one knee in front of me to talk to me and to catch this baby because I started getting pushy. And I started pushing contractions, and I'm pushing. And the only thing I had asked for your help with in this birth experience was to push slower.
Yeah.
Because with our fourth baby, I pushed really fast and shot her out of my vagina. And I tore quite a bit. And I wanted to go a little slower. And so I remember I was pushing, and you said to me, don't forget to do your horse lips. If any of you are not familiar with horse lips, but you literally like it relaxes your vagina. You can't help it. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Practice it in the car so people can look at you and wonder what the heck you're doing. Like, what in the world?
I'm relaxing my vagina, okay?
Yeah, what? Don't judge. And so I started pushing, and sure enough, this baby, unlike our third baby, was still facing my left side because I felt his shoulders in my bum. And I remember thinking, are you kidding me? I have to have like every freaking type of birth. Like, what the hell? Can I not just have a simple birth? And he started crowning, and you were telling me, just do your horse lips. And I remember squatting, and at this point I was too exhausted. And you were on one knee with your hands out to catch this baby. And I leaned over you, over your shoulder, and you were holding me up while waiting to catch this baby.
Yeah.
And you were telling me, go slow, babe. Do your horse lips. And I remember thinking, this baby's head is halfway out of me. I'm waiting for another contraction. And I looked down and I was like, he's wearing his Green Lantern shirt. Oh, look, I got blood on it. Crap. No. Next contraction, F this, he's coming out. And the next contraction that came with this baby's his head halfway out, I pushed with every ounce of energy and soul that I had in me to get this baby out, because I knew for his safety and mine, that was it. He had to come out. And I did. I pushed him all the way out, and you caught him.
I did.
And he cried right away.
He did.
And the umbilical cord was wrapped around his ankle twice. Right. And the thing about this birth, I don't talk about this birth experience a lot because it was very hard.
Yeah.
And it's because there was so much surrounding it. And my gut instincts told me I needed midwives for after I had him, and they were right. I didn't feel right after I had him. I wasn't bleeding at all, actually. So we got cleaned up, and of course, I birthed the placenta, which was done. And we cut the cord, tied it off, and I wasn't bleeding at all, and I was shaky, and I knew something was wrong. So I decided to take a shower and get cleaned up. And during this, I did pass a piece of retained placenta, and then everything started regulating, and we got cleaned up and we got in bed, and, I had him at the breast, and then we decided, we all fell asleep, basically. We were all exhausted. And I remember waking up in the morning or after a few hours, whatever it was. I don't even remember.
I think it was hour and a half or so.
Yeah, we took a nap, and I woke up, and my first thought was, I kind of patted around the bed, and I thought, okay, I'm still alive. That's how hard our lives were, this pregnancy was, this birth experience was, and why I don't talk about it a lot. It was a very difficult time in my life, in our lives, and it's nothing I saw coming,
Yeah.
And
you actually sent me to CVS to get you some Advil because
I
you're in
did.
such pain.
I did.
I was like, oh.
It's quite a thing to have an all-natural birth and be like, go get me the strongest thing you can get me, because the after pains.
Yeah.
People don't talk about after pains a lot, and the more babies you have, it's true, the more intense they get. You're having these like after pain contractions because your body's trying to make sure that you're okay. Your uterus is contracting back down to normal size, and it's intense. And he was doing great. That's the thing. He was doing great. I was not doing great. And this postpartum was very different than our last. You were still working overnight valet. You were trying to get patients into this new office that we got keys of the same week we had this baby.
Yeah.
We had 4 other young children. And it was a very, very difficult time in our lives, which we never saw coming. And luckily, thankfully, whatever you believe in, he was our best sleeper as an infant. Believe it or not, that is something he's been our most challenging child. But as a baby, I learned about swaddling. I learned about pacifiers, and I gave no F's again. And I breastfed him, but I swaddled him and I gave him passies. And when you would leave for overnight valet jobs, it was like I could breathe because the other kids were in bed. I could get him to bed and he would stay asleep 6 to 8 hours, and I could have a glass of wine. And if I could scrounge up a few dollars, a Ben and Jerry's. And then we had Netflix because I used different emails to get a free week of Netflix. We were broke, man.
Yeah, we were.
There were weeks where I remember one week we had $21 to put gas in the car and get food to feed a family of 7.
Yeah.
And Aldi's, if you're not familiar with Aldi's is it actually wasn't originated in the U.S.
No, it's
Swedish?
European. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And they opened
And
up all over Dallas.
they had like 35-cent dozen eggs at the time. I had a bread machine I cooked homemade bread in. We had a crock pot that we cooked beans in. We just had to make it through the week, many times.
One of the meals we'd do is we'd have top ramen, make a pot of 2 or 3 packs of top ramen, throw in some eggs and maybe some cheap frozen vegetables
If we had the money that week for the veggies.
Right, and have homemade egg drop soup. That cost
Yum,
maybe
right? Yum.
$2 to make for the entire family. So that's
what's amazing. We're all about organic, whole food type diets. That's the thing. Like we're very, very. We believe very strongly in conscious eating and eating healthy, and that being like basically health insurance. But I have mad respect for cheap eggs and cheap ramen because we would have gone completely without food without it.
We're also believers in surviving and eating and not starving.
Eating is good. We got a
crock.
I got the crock pot for $10 and the bread maker for $5 at Goodwill.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so there were some nights for dinner that it was a loaf of bread I made with like honey, and that's all we had. You remember?
I do.
Yeah. It was yummy though.
It was good bread.
The kids did not care. The kids were like, this is awesome. Because it was hot, fresh bread. And our house smelled great. They didn't know. They didn't know any different. They felt love and they had a home and they had food.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't care about much else. So the main message that I want to share with this birth story isn't so much about the birth itself. It's to never give up.
Yeah.
Because there were many times during this pregnancy and birth experience and postpartum that you and I could have given up. We could have separated. We could have gotten divorced. We could have said, this is too hard. I could have ran back to my family. But the thing is what I've learned, that when life is good, It's not always going to stay there, right? Unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to enjoy every moment you can. Because eventually life is going to be like, oh, that's so great, but I have more lessons to teach you. And it's no matter how many plans you make, no matter how many things you put in order, you just don't know.
Yep.
Which is frustrating, especially if you have anxiety.
More lessons and still no KY jelly.
Where's the coconut oil, life? And so it brings you back down. Like, I'm right now, you can't see me, but I'm using my hand. Like, you're on and up. You have to enjoy as many moments as you can. And life kind of brings you back down to teach you some lessons. And no matter how low you get, for you guys listening, no matter how low you feel right now, no matter how alone you feel, no matter how depressed you feel, you have to remember that just like life doesn't stay in the greatest moments, in the highs, it won't stay in the lows either. And you can't give up, because eventually, at some point, it'll come back up again.
Mm-hmm.
I promise. I promise you. So the bull has taught me many lessons, from his pregnancy to his birth, because it's his birth, to the postpartum and since. And the main thing is to not give up. That no matter how low it feels, no matter how hard life gets, that if you are loving your babies, if you are somehow feeding them, whatever that looks like, and if you have a roof over your head, no matter what that looks like, you're doing okay. Yep. Everything else is icing on the cake. So take a deep breath and know that you are doing okay. And know that you are not the only one going through whatever you're going through right now. And that it will get better. From someone who's been there, it will get better. It won't always be perfect, but there's something to live for tomorrow. There's something to look forward to, even if you don't know what that is yet.
That is true.
Don't you have anything to add to that?
It feels like there's another 5 or 6 months to add on to that. The postpartum and the financial struggles got actually even worse financially before I finally, almost 2 days shy of my 2-year graduation date, finally had some chiropractic success. But man, oh man, that was crazy rough.
That is true. And, during this time, we had this new baby. We have 4 other kids, and we were just trying to get through day to day. And I actually had severe postpartum depression.
Yeah.
I didn't know it for a while, which I think is typical. You don't realize it at first. That's what's really going on. And we didn't give up. You were working valet. You were trying to let people know that you were there practicing chiropractic, although in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best place to practice chiropractic.
No, I was one of 7 chiropractors on this one intersection in Carrollton. It wasn't the most intelligent business decision I've ever made. But yeah, I would work. I was still working the overnight valet full time, parking cars for prostitutes and drug dealers.
Stop it! But it's true.
It's true. Had one guy one night. He was at some weekend seminar he was drunk, trying to tell me all the pros about going away for the weekend and putting his wedding ring in his pocket and
you had this
cheating on his wife.
And you had a wife at home that you loved and wanted to be with, and you were...
Who I knew was struggling. I literally... He was in mid-sentence. I literally turned around and just walked away from him because I was afraid I was going to knock his teeth out. And I was that angry about it. And so I just walked off and just ignored him. But it's
interesting because, what happened is that we didn't give up. And sure enough, you had some patients who you helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they told their sister, who lived in this tiny drive-through town in Texas, she owned this little ice spa. She called it the ice spa.
Ice spa, yeah.
And
Jenny,
she's awesome. And she contacted you and said, you have helped my sister and my brother-in-law so much. We have no one like that here.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to drive here a couple hours? It was a couple hours away, right?
4 hours away from Dallas.
Would you be willing to drive here? I'll set up all the people. Like, I'll let everyone know you're coming.
Yeah.
And you were like, yes.
Yeah, sure.
And so you went up one Saturday and you saw how many people?
I saw 23 new patients in 12 and a half hours.
Which is insane.
So I left about 3:30 in the morning from Dallas, got there about 7:30, set up my equipment real quick, started seeing people until about 8 that night, completely exhausted. Then I drove back home. It took me a couple days to recover physically, but in that one day, I had literally made more money than I'd ever made in my life in one day.
1,800?
It was enough to pay rent and get some
We were
good
like-
groceries.
We were like, oh my gosh, we've hit the jackpot. Like, it was the most money we had seen in the longest time.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, since like a student loan check,
Yeah.
it was the most money we had seen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And then she wanted you to come back a few weeks later.
Right. So I went back 2 weekends later, and of those original 23 new patients, 18 of them came back, and I saw an additional 24 new patients. And on top of 3 new patients in Dallas, I had a total of 50 new patients that month. Which is funny because when I had that associateship in Austin, I had said I wanted to bring in 20 new patients, and they had pointed out how I failed at doing that before I left. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe I can't cut it as a chiropractor. Well, I did it. I cut it.
Cut it out. Any full house? What is it? Full house family?
Full house, yeah.
And you came to me and you said, I think we need to move here. I was like, where the hell is this town? I had to get on Google Maps and look it up. It was literally a drive-through town between Wichita Falls and Amarillo, Texas. Not Amarillo, Amarilla.
Amarilla.
It was between Wichita Falls and Amarillo, Texas.
It's like right in the corner, bottom right corner of the panhandle.
It had the Walmart, so it was the main town.
It was.
I said, I don't know about that. I don't think I want to live there. So then 2 weeks later, we went with you and we checked it out. And I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can live here. And you said, January, I'll be able to provide for my family. And that's everything. I was like, wow, crap. I can't argue with that. So we did. We moved to this little Texas town. Yeah,
we moved there, and
it's the best thing for our family to get on our feet.
It was great. It took a few months. That was in 2011, September of 2011, and
so at this time the bull was about 6 months old.
About 6 months old. So we moved down there. The rest of that year, it was okay. It was still trying to let people know I was there. And then the start of the year of 2012, each month got progressively better and better and better. And then by the summer, things just exploded to the point when I did all my numbers for the 2012 year. I end up averaging 40 new patients a month.
There were so many people there that didn't have any alternative health care. I remember one time I was at the grocery store and this woman came up to me and said, "You Dr. Harsh's wife?" And I said, yes, I am. It's a small town, right? Like everyone knows who you are. Everyone knew where we lived. Everyone knew who we were. And I said, yes. And she said, oh my gosh, I went in to see your husband and my neck, I could not turn it this way for 3 years. I went into him one time and look at this. I can turn my neck. And I'm like in the ice cream aisle, right? I'm like, that's great. Yeah. Like he's really good at what he does. I go, so I told everyone I know. And I'm like, I know, that's awesome. Thank you so much. You know, like so many stories of people who didn't feel they had any hope or they couldn't get any help any other way than a conventional way and weren't being heard. You know, I mean, how many farmers did you have come in that were in pain that finally had relief?
Oh my gosh.
And
I've never met so many people bucked off a horse.
I know.
Multiple times in their life. It was
so
wild.
Many stories. Oh my gosh. It was amazing. And this whole time I was doing Birth Out Fear. And, you know, for free. Like, to put it bluntly, you know, I mean, the amount of time, the amount of blood, literally the blood, sweat, and tears I had put into Birth Out Fear I remember when we were living there, you finally came to me and you said, you are spending so much time on birth that fear that it either has to provide an income for our family, you have to walk away, because it's not fair to me and the kids how much time you spend on this. I hate to admit that, but it's true. And I was like, well, I'm not walking away from it. It's needed. It's too important. You know, that's when I started speaking, and whatnot. But, so this was a very transitional time for our family.
Yeah, it was.
And we knew when we moved there that we wouldn't stay there longer than 3 years. We are city people. And our oldest daughter went vegetarian when we lived there, and she was the only vegetarian in that town and any surrounding town. I mean,
she was probably the only vegetarian for 200 miles.
Yeah. Like, Austin is our people. Austin's our place. So we lasted close to that, but before we came to Austin. But yeah, so it was a very transitional time for us when we had this fifth baby, and there was so much uncertainty and so much chaos, and just we didn't know how things were going to work out. And the number one thing that I took from that time in our lives was to not give up.
You just can't. You just have to be determined and keep going.
Yeah,
going forward.
And many times it's just taking action and doing the work and not giving up, and you don't even know how it's going to work out. We could have never planned for that to have happened. But by us not giving up, it led to that happening. So to anybody listening to this, just don't give up. I know how hard things can be. I know how lonely things can be. I know in this age of social media where everyone seems to share everything or the best moments of their life, that it can feel so lonely, because who wants to share those most vulnerable moments? And even when they do, you're like, are they really sharing that to be authentic, or just because
just trying to get attention?
Yeah. So, just know that you're not alone, and that it doesn't have a choice but to make things right at some point.
Yep.
Like, I think it was Buddha who said, right, just things won't always be bad, but they won't always be good. Like, the one thing you can count on is change. That's what it is. I think. Don't quote me on that perfectly, because I'm not Buddha. But the one thing you can count on is always change. So when things are going really difficultly or hard or whatnot, is you can count on that it will change and it will get better. Just don't give up. And there are many days where our oldest and I were talking about this the other day. I was making some vegan, gluten-free chocolate chip cookies, which sounds like air, but I was making them as a treat for myself because the way I've been eating lately. And I said, do you remember us making chocolate chip cookies all the time? She said, yeah. And I said, that was because when I was going through the hardest times, or you were at work and at school, Brandon, or, things just felt like impossible, that I could get some flour and some butter, and cheap chocolate chips. And that was a treat to be able to afford all that. Mm-hmm. And we could make chocolate chip cookies. And if I could make chocolate chip cookies, it was a good day. It was a good time. So we made chocolate chip cookies a lot. Yeah. A lot. So don't give up, and find things that just bring you joy in the daily, whether that's putting on Spotify, making chocolate chip cookies, going for a walk. Just don't give up. Especially when you're going through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, parenthood. All right. I think I've talked a lot.
You just added a word to the January dictionary too.
What? Which one?
You said difficultly.
Difficultly, yes.
Yeah.
That can go with uniquity.
Yeah.
Agreeance. Actually, that's a real word.
It is, but it's kind of like an expired word. Doesn't really.
That's okay. I don't expire.
In the last 200 years.
I don't expire.
What's another one? You said
I'm
another
timeless.
one recently.
So, yeah. There's been a lot going on lately. I think that everything's been crazy with the what is it? Mercury in retrograde. I never believed in this crap. But let me tell you what, I believe in it now.
I didn't either, but yeah, these last 3 weeks have been insane.
I was all set to go to Calgary this weekend, and flights went haywire.
Canceled.
Everything's been haywire.
Rescheduling, it was insane.
Yeah, and I realized that everything in my life was pointing to no, and so I needed to listen. So if everything in your life is pointing to something, just listen, because...
Well, you kind of didn't have a choice with the way the flights
Absolutely.
worked out.
Yeah. So good news for those of you listening is it's Labor Day weekend, which means things are on pause. So just enjoy that pause. Our merchandise is 20% off. So if you go to selflovegeneration.com or harshi.blog/store. Anyways, 20% off on our shirts. We also have 2 new shirts that are in the works.
Oh, yeah.
Really excited about those. We have so many great things in the works. So check those out. Grab
20% off through Labor Day.
You did not. Just sound like the Moviefone guy.
Hello and welcome to AOL Moviefone.
No.
Brought to you by Home Depot.
Oh my gosh. You just took me back to the late 90s, early 2000s. That's awesome. Anyway, so everyone, thank you for being patient with us with the rescheduled events. I love you guys so much, and I appreciate all your love. And I have a vision for my social media, which some of you might be picking up on, but I'll share more about that later. And we just love you guys. Don't give up, and a whole hell of a lot of solidarity.
Yep. Lots of it.
All right, you guys. Until next time, much love.
Until next time.